Ladies and gentlemen, it is often said that the most powerful thing we can offer someone is empathy, understanding their pain and validating their feelings. We live in a world that moves so fast, where the noise of the daily grind can drown out the subtle cries for help, but deep down, we know that people are hurting. They're hurting in ways that can't always be seen on the surface, and yet, even in the midst of that pain, there is something extraordinary about those who take the time to truly see us. They knew you were hurting. Life is marked by suffering. It's a truth that, while uncomfortable, holds undeniable weight. Human suffering is not something that can be wished away or avoided through simple solutions, yet we constantly try to do so. We live in an age where the pursuit of happiness, success, and comfort seems paramount, often at the expense of acknowledging the deeper complexities of human existence. We have become experts at avoiding discomfort, pushing through the challenges of life with the mindset of just get through it, without ever stopping to confront the very thing we're trying to avoid, suffering itself. But here's the issue: suffering is inescapable. No matter how wealthy you are, how healthy, or how well educated, life will, at some point, hand you hardship that you cannot ignore. It is part of the human experience. This is not a pessimistic or nihilistic viewpoint, but rather a call for realism. We cannot live in denial of the pain that is inherent to being human, and more importantly, we cannot build meaningful lives by pretending it doesn't exist. In fact, it is only by facing suffering head-on that we can begin to understand the true nature of our existence. The first thing to understand is that suffering is not an anomaly. It is not an event that stands outside of life, interrupting the flow of things. Suffering is part of the process of being alive. The world is inherently chaotic. It is unpredictable. And when we try to impose order on it without fully acknowledging its volatility, we are likely to set ourselves up for disappointment. Pain is the response our bodies and minds give us when we encounter that chaos, that uncertainty. It tells us that something is wrong, that something needs to be addressed, that we need to grow, adapt, or change in order to survive and thrive. At its core, suffering is an indication of something in our lives that is out of alignment with the way things should be. Whether it's physical pain, emotional distress, or existential angst, suffering signals that our understanding of the world, ourselves, or the relationships we hold is incomplete. It is a powerful teacher, though a harsh one. Like fire that burns and purifies, suffering has the potential to shape us into something stronger, more resilient, and more attuned to the world around us. But let's be clear, suffering is not inherently redemptive. It doesn't automatically lead to growth. It can, in fact, destroy us if we allow it to. The way we approach suffering, the way we react to it, is what determines whether it becomes a catalyst for transformation or a force that leaves us broken and debilitated. To grow through suffering, we must learn how to face it courageously, to confront it without turning away. And this is not easy. One of the great mistakes people make is viewing suffering as something to be avoided at all costs. We think of pain as something unnatural, something that shouldn't be a part of our lives. We pursue comfort, convenience, and pleasure as though they were the ultimate goals of life. And when we do experience pain, we try to medicate it, escape it, or distract ourselves from it, all in the hope that it will go away. We avoid suffering through entertainment, through material possessions, through distractions, but these are not solutions. They are temporary reliefs at best. We cannot truly heal or transform unless we face our suffering and deal with it directly. There is a difference between suffering that leads to growth and suffering that leads to stagnation. One might call it the difference between meaningful suffering and pointless suffering. Meaningful suffering is suffering that has purpose behind it. It is the pain we experience when we're striving towards something difficult, when we're trying to become better people, when we're pushing against our limits in order to develop. It's the suffering that comes with taking on responsibility, facing adversity, and working toward a goal that requires us to stretch beyond what we thought we were capable of. Meaningful suffering is the pain that comes from living with integrity, from standing up for what's right, and from making decisions that are aligned with our deepest values. On the other hand, pointless suffering is the kind that comes from avoiding responsibility, from running away from difficult situations, or from failing to learn the lessons that pain is trying to teach us. This is the suffering that stems from making poor choices, from indulging in destructive habits, or from allowing ourselves to become passive victims of life's chaos rather than actively engaging with it. Pointless suffering is the pain of stagnation, the kind that leaves us feeling helpless, hopeless, and trapped in patterns we cannot escape. So the question is not whether we will suffer, it is how we will suffer. The nature of suffering is not defined by the event itself, but by how we respond to it. This is where meaning enters the equation. The people who suffer most deeply are often the ones who find the greatest sense of meaning in their lives. They are the ones who learn from their pain, who confront it with the determination to come out stronger on the other side. They understand that suffering is not something to be avoided at all costs, but something to be embraced as part of the journey toward becoming who we are meant to be. When we face suffering, we have two choices. We can either succumb to despair, or we can rise to the challenge and use our pain to transform ourselves. The decision is ours. The first step toward dealing with suffering is to accept that it is part of life and that we cannot escape it. From there, we must decide how we will respond. Will we shrink in fear, or will we confront the challenges before us with courage and strength? Will we allow suffering to break us, or will we allow it to make us stronger? In this sense, suffering becomes a test of character. It forces us to dig deeper, to search for meaning even when life seems senseless. It calls us to take responsibility, to stand tall in the face of adversity, and to rise above the chaos. And while it's true that we can never escape suffering entirely, we can choose how we meet it. The key is not to resist it or deny it, but to face it with strength and purpose, understanding that it is in the struggle that we find our greatest potential. Ultimately, the nature of human suffering is not something to be feared. It is something to be understood, something to be integrated into our journey as we strive for meaning and growth. It is through suffering that we truly come to know who we are, what we stand for, and what we are capable of overcoming. Recognition is one of the most profound forces in human interaction. It is a simple act, one that often goes unnoticed or underappreciated, but its effects are far-reaching. Recognition, at its core, is the ability to see another person for who they truly are, to acknowledge their existence, their struggles, and their humanity. It is not just the act of noticing someone, but the act of truly perceiving them. When someone recognizes your pain, your effort, or your potential, something shifts within you. It validates your experience, affirms your worth, and perhaps most importantly, reminds you that you are not alone in this chaotic, unpredictable world. At its simplest, recognition is a basic human need. From the moment we are born, we seek acknowledgement. As infants, our cries are our only form of communication. We call out for attention, for comfort, for care. This is the beginning of a lifelong pursuit to be seen. For the infant, the recognition of their existence through the care and attention of others becomes the foundation for trust, attachment, and emotional security. As we grow older, that need for recognition becomes more complex, but it never goes away. It evolves, but the desire to be understood, to be valued, and to be seen for who we truly are remains. This is what makes the power of recognition so significant. When someone recognizes you not just in a passing glance, but deeply and authentically, something inside you stirs. It's as though for a moment you are fully seen, fully acknowledged, and in that moment you feel that you matter. In a world that often seems indifferent, the act of being truly seen offers something rare and invaluable, a connection. But recognition is not merely about acknowledgement in the surface sense. It is about recognition in its deeper form, where one person perceives the suffering, the striving, and the complexity of another. It is easy to see someone on the outside, to notice their appearance, their actions, or their status, but this is not true recognition. True recognition is not based on appearances. It is based on understanding the depth of what someone is experiencing, even when they do not explicitly communicate it. It is the ability to sense the pain behind the mask, the hidden struggle beneath the smile, the silent longing behind the words. There is a profound power in this kind of recognition. It is the power to heal, to comfort, and to bring light into dark places. When someone truly recognizes your pain, when they acknowledge that you are struggling, even if they don't fully understand the depths of it, there is a powerful effect on your psyche. It is as though for a brief moment you are no longer invisible, no longer alone or alone in your suffering. It affirms that you are seen and that your pain is real, valid, and worthy of attention. This form of recognition is not something that can be fabricated or forced. It must come from a place of genuine empathy and care. It is not enough to offer recognition in a mechanical way as a form of social politeness or out of obligation. True recognition comes from a place of deep awareness, where the person offering it is tuned into the other's inner world. This requires a level of attentiveness and vulnerability that is not easy to achieve. It means putting aside your own concerns and being willing to listen, to observe, and to understand. It means creating space for the other person to be who they are, without judgment or expectation. For those who are the recipients of this recognition, its effects are transformative. There is a significant difference between being acknowledged in a cursory manner and being recognized deeply. When you are merely acknowledged, you feel seen for a moment, but the impact is fleeting. It is like being noticed in a crowd and then quickly fading back into obscurity. However, when you are truly recognized, you are affirmed on a much deeper level. You are given a sense of validation that resonates far beyond the immediate moment. It changes how you see yourself, and it can change the trajectory of your life. Recognition also holds a mirror up to the person who is offering it. When you recognize someone else, when you truly see them for who they are, you are acknowledging not just their humanity, but your own. You are stepping into a space of mutual understanding where both of you are seen and valued. This act of recognition fosters a deeper sense of connection and belonging. It reminds us that we are not islands in the storm, isolated in our own struggles. We are, in fact, deeply interconnected. The recognition of another's humanity enhances our own understanding of what it means to be human. It brings us closer to others and to ourselves. However, it is also important to note that recognition is not always immediate, nor is it guaranteed. There are many instances in life where people may not recognize the pain or potential in others. In such cases, it is easy to become disheartened or to question one's worth. Yet, the absence of recognition from others does not diminish your value. It may only point to the limitations of those around you, the inability or unwillingness of others to truly see you. But that does not mean you are not worthy of recognition. It does not mean that you are not worthy of being seen. In fact, recognition must also come from within. While the recognition of others is profoundly important, it is equally crucial to cultivate self-recognition. The ability to recognize your own struggles, to acknowledge your own efforts, and to understand your own worth is foundational to your sense of identity. If you cannot recognize yourself, you cannot expect others to do so. Self-recognition is the first step toward healing and growth, and it must precede external recognition. Only when you recognize your own value and your own suffering can you fully receive and appreciate the recognition of others. Recognition, in both its giving and receiving, is one of the most powerful forces in human interaction. It shapes our relationships, our sense of self, and our ability to grow and heal. It is a reminder that in a world that can often feel overwhelming and isolating, the simple act of seeing one another can make all the difference. Recognition affirms the validity of our experiences, comforts us in our struggles, and reminds us that, in the end, we are all connected in our shared humanity. Empathy is one of the most transformative and underappreciated forces in human relationships. It is often seen as simply the act of understanding or sharing the feelings of another, but in truth, empathy is much more than that. Empathy is not just about feeling with someone, it's about the ability to connect on a deeper level, to bridge the gap between two distinct experiences, and in doing so, to facilitate change, not only in the person being empathized with, but in the person offering it as well. At its core, empathy is about seeing and feeling the world through another's eyes, understanding their emotional and psychological reality, and responding to them in a way that is both compassionate and meaningful. In a world that is increasingly driven by individualism and the need for self-preservation, empathy can seem like a scarce commodity. Yet it is the very thing that has the potential to heal broken hearts, to mend fractured relationships, and to transform individuals at their deepest levels. Empathy is not merely a passive emotional response, it is an active, conscious choice. It is the choice to step outside of your own worldview and temporarily inhabit another's perspective. It requires humility, vulnerability, and the courage to face the discomfort that comes with fully engaging with someone else's pain. In its truest form, empathy demands that you do more than just sympathize with someone's struggles. It demands that you actively listen, that you open yourself up to their emotional experience, and that you respond in a way that acknowledges both their suffering and their humanity. The act of empathizing with someone does not always mean you agree with their choices or their perspective. You might not understand why they feel the way they do, and you may not even condone their actions. Empathy is not about judgment or fixing the problem. It is about recognizing the validity of another person's emotional reality and offering a space where they can be heard, seen, and understood. It is through this non-judgmental space that transformation occurs. One of the most significant ways empathy acts as a tool for transformation is in the way it allows us to break free from isolation. Human beings by nature are social creatures, and one of our greatest fears is the fear of being alone. When we are suffering, one of the most painful aspects of that suffering is the sense that no one understands, no one sees what we are going through. This feeling of isolation can deepen our pain and make us feel as though we are unworthy of connection. But when someone truly empathizes with us, when they meet us in our pain, acknowledge it, and offer us a compassionate response, we are suddenly no longer alone. Our suffering is shared, and in that sharing, the weight of it is often lightened. This sense of connection is what makes empathy such a powerful tool for personal transformation. When we feel seen and understood, we are far more likely to be open to change, to healing, and to growth. Empathy creates the psychological safety necessary for us to confront the most difficult aspects of ourselves. It opens the door to self-reflection and allows us to process emotions that we might otherwise suppress or deny. Without empathy, we can remain stuck in cycles of pain, disconnected from the people who might help us heal, and disconnected from our own potential for change. But empathy is not just something we offer to others, it is also something we must offer to ourselves. Self-empathy is the practice of recognizing and understanding our own emotions without judgment. It involves treating ourselves with the same compassion and understanding that we offer to others when they are suffering. This practice is crucial for personal transformation because it allows us to confront our own vulnerabilities, to acknowledge our mistakes, and to make space for growth. Just as we would not berate a friend who is struggling, we should not berate ourselves for our struggles. Instead, we must offer ourselves understanding, recognizing that our pain and shortcomings are part of the human condition. Through this kind of self-empathy, we can begin to heal, to learn from our mistakes, and to move forward with greater clarity and resilience. Empathy also plays a crucial role in transforming relationships. Relationships are the primary context in which empathy is experienced, and it is through our relationships with others that we often find our greatest opportunities for growth. When we practice empathy in our relationships, we not only help others feel seen and understood, but we also open the door to deeper connection. This connection is the foundation for trust, intimacy, and collaboration. Without empathy, relationships can easily become transactional or superficial. Without empathy, we become distant, disconnected, and unable to effectively communicate. But when empathy is present, it fosters an environment where vulnerability is safe, where people can express their true selves without fear of judgment or rejection. In this environment, transformation can occur both individually and collectively. However, empathy is not without its challenges. It is often easier to be empathetic when we agree with someone or when their struggles mirror our own. It's much harder to empathize with someone whose perspective or experience is radically different from ours. In such situations, it can be tempting to dismiss their emotions or to judge them for their choices. But true empathy requires that we set aside our own biases and judgments, and it demands that we meet the other person where they are without trying to impose our own understanding of the world onto them. This is where empathy becomes a powerful tool for transformation, not just for the person receiving it, but for the person offering it as well. By practicing empathy with those who are different from us, whether in terms of beliefs, values, or experiences, we are forced to confront our own biases, broaden our own perspectives, and deepen our understanding of the complexity of the human experience. Empathy also involves a level of discomfort. It is much easier to maintain emotional distance and protect ourselves from the vulnerability of another person's pain. But when we allow ourselves to engage fully, we risk exposing ourselves to the emotional weight of the other person's suffering. It is precisely this discomfort, however, that makes empathy such a transformative tool. When we allow ourselves to sit with someone else's pain, when we allow ourselves to feel what they are feeling, we open ourselves to deeper emotional connection, to greater compassion, and to a more profound understanding of the human condition. Ultimately, empathy is a tool for transformation because it has the power to change the way we relate to others, the way we understand ourselves, and the way we navigate the world. It has the power to heal wounds, to break down barriers, and to create connections that transcend our differences. Through empathy, we can move from a place of isolation and fear to a place of understanding, compassion, and growth. It is in these moments of empathetic connection that true transformation occurs both in others and in ourselves. Self-reflection is an essential aspect of personal growth, yet it is often neglected in the hustle of modern life. We live in a world that encourages action, productivity, and results, sometimes at the expense of introspection. In a society where external achievements are often prioritized over internal understanding, the act of looking inward can seem like a luxury or an unnecessary pause. However, self-reflection is not a mere indulgence, it is a responsibility that shapes our identity, informs our decisions, and ultimately determines the direction of our lives. Self-reflection is the act of turning your attention inward, questioning your thoughts, beliefs, actions, and motivations. It is the process of observing yourself without judgment and without the rush to justify or defend. This process is critical because without it, we live in a state of unconsciousness, reacting to the world around us without understanding why we behave the way we do or what drives us to act in certain ways. Self-reflection forces us to confront our own contradictions, our blind spots, and our biases. It helps us better understand our values, our weaknesses, and the areas of our lives that need improvement. The responsibility of self-reflection begins with the recognition that we are not always the people we think we are. We often operate under the assumption that we are consistent and logical in our actions, but when we take a step back, we can see the dissonance between our intentions and our behaviors. We may hold certain beliefs or values, but our actions often betray them. This dissonance can go unnoticed unless we are actively engaged in self-reflection. Without this awareness, we risk continuing down a path that does not align with who we truly wish to become, repeating mistakes and reinforcing unhealthy patterns. Self-reflection requires honesty, a quality that is often uncomfortable and even painful to cultivate. It means taking a long, hard look at the parts of ourselves we might prefer to ignore or deny. This might include acknowledging our flaws, our insecurities, our biases, or our failures. It is easy to present a version of ourselves that we feel is acceptable to others, but true self-reflection demands vulnerability. We must be willing to see ourselves as we are, not as we wish to be or as others perceive us. This is not an exercise in self-loathing or criticism, but in awareness and growth. The purpose is not to tear ourselves down, but to build ourselves up by understanding where we need to change and how we can evolve. The responsibility of self-reflection also involves questioning our motivations and the reasons behind our choices. Often, we make decisions based on societal pressures, external expectations, or unconscious desires that we have never fully examined. We may pursue careers, relationships, or lifestyles because they align with what others expect of us or because they promise validation, success, or comfort. Self-reflection asks us to dig deeper, to ask why we are making these choices and whether they are truly in alignment with our authentic selves. It forces us to evaluate whether we are living a life that is true to our values or if we are merely following a script written by external forces. Self-reflection also brings to light the ways in which we impact others. We are not isolated individuals. We are part of a web of relationships, family, friends, colleagues, and communities, and our actions affect those around us. Too often we act without considering the consequences of our behavior on others. Self-reflection gives us the space to evaluate how our words, actions, and attitudes contribute to the well-being of those we interact with. It encourages empathy as we begin to consider how others experience us and how we can improve the way we engage with the world. It challenges us to take responsibility for the impact we have on others, whether positive or negative. Moreover, self-reflection is not a one-time event, but a continual process. It is not enough to reflect on our actions once and expect change to occur. True growth happens through sustained, consistent self-examination. As we evolve, new layers of self-awareness unfold, and our understanding of ourselves deepens. The more we reflect, the more we are able to refine our behavior, our thinking, and our choices. This process is not linear, it is ongoing and cyclical. As we return to past experiences and insights, seeing them through the lens of our current understanding. This continual process of self-reflection requires discipline and commitment. In an age of distraction, where information and entertainment are constantly vying for our attention, it is easy to neglect self-reflection. It requires time, space, and a willingness to engage in discomfort. Many people shy away from this practice because it forces them to confront difficult truths about themselves, and that confrontation can be uncomfortable. However, without it, we remain stagnant, trapped in the same patterns, unable to evolve or grow. Self-reflection also requires humility. It demands that we recognize that we are not perfect, that we will make mistakes, and that we will falter along the way. We are not infallible creatures, but rather flawed beings who are constantly learning and evolving. Self-reflection encourages us to embrace our imperfections and view them not as obstacles to be avoided, but as opportunities for growth. It invites us to let go of the notion of perfection and instead focus on progress, on becoming better versions of ourselves one step at a time. The responsibility of self-reflection extends to how we understand and engage with the world. Our beliefs, attitudes, and actions are shaped by the way we view ourselves and the world around us. By engaging in self-reflection, we can begin to discern the sources of our beliefs and challenge them when they no longer serve us. We can examine the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what is possible, and we can rewrite those stories when necessary. Self-reflection allows us to take ownership of our narrative and to actively shape the future we want to create. This responsibility also extends to our role in society. If we are to be truly responsible individuals, we must reflect not only on our personal lives, but also on the larger systems and structures in which we are embedded. We must reflect on how our actions, choices, and behaviors contribute to the larger community and the world as a whole. This broader reflection encourages social responsibility and an awareness of the interconnectedness of all things. It helps us move beyond self-interest and work toward the common good. In essence, self-reflection is not just a tool for personal development, it is a moral responsibility. It is through self-reflection that we come to understand who we truly are, what we value, and what our purpose in life might be. It is through self-reflection that we learn from our mistakes, grow in wisdom, and transform into the individuals we are capable of becoming. The responsibility of self-reflection is to engage in this process consistently and with integrity, recognizing that our growth is not just for our benefit, but for the benefit of everyone we encounter in our journey through life. Connection is one of the most fundamental aspects of the human experience. It transcends the superficial interactions we encounter daily, reaching into the deepest parts of who we are and how we relate to the world around us. In a world where technology increasingly mediates our interactions and societal pressures push us toward greater individualism, the true meaning of connection is often overlooked or misunderstood. Yet, connection remains a driving force in our lives, shaping our relationships, influencing our sense of purpose, and guiding our emotional and psychological well-being. At its core, connection is about a shared understanding between individuals, a recognition of each other's humanity, and a bridge between different experiences. It is the acknowledgement that despite our differences, we are fundamentally similar in our desires, our struggles, and our need for belonging. Connection is not merely the act of being in the same physical space with someone, it is a deep emotional bond that is built through empathy, trust, and vulnerability. It is the act of seeing someone not just as an individual, but as another person who has their own thoughts, feelings, fears, and desires. The desire for connection is inherent to human nature. From the moment we are born, we seek connection with others. Infants cry out not just for food or comfort, but for the presence of another human being. The early bonds we form with our caregivers lay the foundation for the rest of our relationships and our ability to trust the world around us. These early connections provide us with the sense of security we need to explore the world and develop our sense of self. As we grow older, our need for connection remains, although the forms it takes evolve. We seek connection not only with family and friends, but with broader communities, ideas, and even causes. Ultimately, connection is essential for our emotional and psychological survival. Without connection, we are left feeling isolated, disconnected, and adrift in a world that can often feel indifferent. However, true connection is often difficult to achieve. It is easy to mistake proximity for connection, and many of us go through life surrounded by people, but never truly experiencing deep, meaningful connection. This is especially evident in a society where digital technology facilitates communication, but often in ways that strip away the depth of human interaction. Social media platforms, for example, provide an illusion of connection, yet they can often leave us feeling more isolated and misunderstood. The likes, comments, and shares we receive do not necessarily indicate that we are truly seen or understood. They are often fleeting gestures that lack emotional substance. True connection requires vulnerability, the willingness to expose our true selves, including our fears, doubts, and insecurities. It is through vulnerability that we allow others to see the parts of ourselves that we often keep hidden. Without vulnerability, connection remains superficial and transactional. To be truly connected to another person, we must be willing to let down our defenses and risk being hurt. This is one of the reasons why true connection is so difficult to attain. It requires us to confront our deepest fears and open ourselves up to potential rejection or pain. Yet it is precisely this vulnerability that fosters deeper bonds and creates the space for real connection to emerge. Connection also requires empathy, the ability to understand and share in another person's experience. Empathy allows us to step outside of our own perspective and into the world of another. It involves listening not just to the words being spoken, but to the underlying emotions, motivations, and struggles that shape those words. Empathy is not about offering advice or trying to fix someone's problems. It is about offering presence and understanding. When we empathize with another person, we show them that their experiences matter and that they are not alone. This kind of connection is deeply healing, as it affirms our shared humanity and reminds us that, despite the isolation we often feel, we are not alone in our struggles. One of the most powerful aspects of connection is its ability to transform both individuals and relationships. When we experience genuine connection with another person, we are changed. The process of connecting with someone on a deep level forces us to confront our own biases, assumptions, and limitations. It opens us up to new perspectives and ways of thinking. Connection has the potential to change how we see the world and how we engage with it. It can challenge our preconceived notions and push us toward personal growth. The ability to truly connect with another person requires that we become more aware of ourselves and others. It forces us to step outside of our own narrow experiences and embrace the complexity and diversity of the human condition. Connection also plays a critical role in our mental and emotional well-being. Studies have shown that people who have strong, supportive relationships are more likely to experience better mental health, lower levels of stress, and greater overall happiness. Conversely, isolation and loneliness are associated with a range of negative psychological outcomes, including depression, anxiety, and even physical illness. Human beings are not meant to navigate life alone. We thrive when we are surrounded by people who understand us and who offer support when we need it. Connection provides us with a sense of belonging, purpose, and validation. It reminds us that we matter, that our experiences are significant, and that we are seen. Furthermore, connection is not just about personal relationships. It extends to our connection with the world around us. Our sense of connection to nature, to our communities, and to the larger forces at play in the world can profoundly impact how we experience life. When we feel connected to something greater than ourselves, we are better able to cope with adversity and navigate life's challenges. Connection to a greater purpose or a shared cause gives us a sense of meaning and direction. It provides us with a framework for understanding the world and our place within it. This kind of connection is not just about interpersonal bonds, but about our relationship to the world, the environment, and the larger systems in which we live. In a world that often emphasizes individual success and achievement, the meaning of connection can be easily overlooked. We are often taught to focus on ourselves, our goals, our ambitions, and our progress, while neglecting the importance of building meaningful relationships with others. Yet, connection is not something that can be taken for granted or achieved by mere force of will. It requires effort, intention, and a willingness to be vulnerable. It demands that we actively engage with others, listen with empathy, and show up for those we care about. Connection is a mutual process, one that involves both giving and receiving. It is through these shared moments of understanding and empathy that we experience the most profound sense of meaning in our lives. Ultimately, the meaning of connection lies in its transformative power. Connection allows us to see the world through the eyes of others, to understand ourselves more deeply, and to find purpose and fulfillment in our relationships and experiences. It is through connection that we learn to navigate the complexities of life, to confront our deepest fears, and to grow as individuals. Connection is the thread that ties us all together, reminding us that despite our differences, we share a common humanity, a humanity that is bound together through our need for love, understanding, and acceptance. In conclusion, the meaning of connection is fundamental to our existence as human beings. It is not merely a luxury or a passing desire, but an essential force that shapes our lives and defines our relationships. True connection requires vulnerability, empathy, and a willingness to understand both ourselves and others deeply. It transcends superficial interactions, offering us the opportunity to truly see and be seen by those around us. Through connection, we find a sense of belonging, purpose, and healing. It has the power to transform our relationships, challenge our assumptions, and drive personal growth. In a world that often values individual achievement over collective well-being, it is vital to remember that our greatest strength lies not in our isolation, but in our ability to connect meaningfully with others. Ultimately, it is through connection that we find the profound sense of fulfillment and understanding that allows us to navigate the complexities of life and build a more compassionate, resilient world.